Bonjour à tous, on se retrouve pour une nouvelle vidéo et décidément, entre Candace Owens et le couple Macron et Dupond-Moretti, eh bien, rien ne va plus. Elle nous fait de nouvelles révélations dans sa dernière vidéo qui est sortie hier soir sur justement l'avocat qu'a choisi Brigitte Macron et Emmanuel Macron pour les représenter face à Candace Owens. Et elle va commencer tout doucement à nous révéler de plus en plus de choses. Je vais vous mettre l'extrait dans son intégralité doublé. Et d'ailleurs, je vais commencer tout de suite parce qu'il est assez long, mais il est extrêmement fouillé.
Because you need to understand, this is not casual, okay? He is publicly representing that he's working with the U.S. attorneys that are suing me to help this investigation, and he is not an average lawyer, okay? Eric Dupond-Moretti, this signals that Brigitte is bringing in the big guns. He is the former Justice Minister of France, okay? So think of that as like the Attorney General of France, handpicked by Brigitte herself. And when she handpicked him, it caused outrage all throughout France. And if you want to know why, it's because, like I said at the top of the show, Eric has a unique skill set. In other words, the cases that Eric takes on as an attorney, the cases that he tends to intervene in, have a common theme. I'm going to briefly tell you about just a couple of these cases. You can look him up independently. I'm not painting a picture here. This is crazy. The first one is known as the Manouche affair. Okay, the Manouche affair refers to a man. His name was Dennis Manouche. He meets a young woman when he's young as well, a teenager. Her name is Lawrence. They decide they're going to get married and begin a life together. They immediately start having some children. Okay. Now, Dennis Manouche is a very skilled engineer. He climbs the ladder at an automobile company and he becomes a senior executive. Him and Lawrence have 5 children. And I'm going to make it very easy for you because I'm going to put together a chart so that you can follow the story. They have 3 girls. Virginie, she's the eldest. She's born in 1981. And then they have Betty, and they have a daughter named Samantha. They also have 2 boys. Their names are Tony and Dimitri. You can keep this up, Skylar, as I keep talking, just so they can follow this. Okay, so Lawrence, his wife, apparently, she just loves to spend money, okay? And Dennis is happy to allow her to spend money so long as they come to an understanding together. And that understanding is she can spend, he won't ask questions, so long as she looks the other way while he rapes their daughters. I'm not kidding, okay? Viewer discretion advised, okay? Listener discretion advised. This is the agreement that they come to. And so he begins to do this in earnest to Betty when she's just 8 years old. Virginie witnesses it. They both go to their mother, and their mom just ignores it because this is the agreement. Betty, okay, that is the younger sister, becomes pregnant from her father 3 times between the ages of 13 and 18 years old. And each time they take her to a different hospital because, you know, she's got to get an abortion, but they also want to avoid any suspicion. They want the hospital to think that she's just like, you know, a girl that sleeps around a lot, a teenager that sleeps around. So they go to 3 different hospitals. Needless to say, it's not just physical abuse. The father is also psychologically abusive. He decides to treat Betty, the one who's been pregnant 3 times, as like the hoe of the family. He has a favorite. Virginie is his favorite. He refers to her as the Duchess. But Betty, he can't stand her. He calls her fat. He calls her ugly. He threatens her and also her mother repeatedly. Like there was this incident where he found a cigarette butt, just to give you an idea of like who he is. He finds a cigarette butt on the ground where they live. And he's like, which one of you is smoking? So he like takes them to the woods and just holds like a rifle to their faces. Betty and the mother, that is, not the Duchess, Virginie. Also, if you're wondering like where are the sons in this story, he actually makes them live in a shed on the property, totally separate. They're not allowed to be in the main house. And he does that for 2 reasons. One is because he wants to keep the sons in the dark regarding the repeated rapes of the daughters, but also because he's very jealous. He doesn't want any male competition in the house where he's living with his wife and his daughters. So he just keeps the sons away, annexed down at the shed. Anyways, fast forward to the year 2000. Betty, the younger sister, is 16. Virginie is now 21. And Dennis decides to make Virginie, his daughter, the main woman of the household. So his wife, Lawrence, let's get that chart up again. His wife, Lawrence, is now relegated, kind of. He's like kind of treating her like she's maybe a daughter with Samantha. But Virginie, he takes her with him everywhere. Of course, they're not officially married on paper, but she's the woman of the household. He takes her to work every day at the automobile garage. She's also especially gifted when it comes to mechanics and engineering. And about a year later, Virginie, his daughter, falls pregnant with his child. And since she's the favorite, he lets her keep the child. So if you're following now, Virginie, his daughter, is about to give birth to his son. So he's the grandfather and the father of Nicholas, who you're seeing at the bottom here on this chart. She gives birth to a boy named Nicholas in 2002. It's going to get crazier. Betty, the younger sister, then turns 18, and she had tried to run away a few times when she was younger. You know, this is the sister that he shames. But by 18, she is able to escape, and she rings the alarm publicly. She files a complaint with the police. She says, me and my sister have been repeatedly raped by my father from the time that I was 8 years old. We have been suffering at his hands. And the driving factor for what drives her into the police's arms is that she was fearful that her sister, the youngest one, Samantha, who at that time is just 4 years old, is going to suffer the same fate. So she finds the courage to report this. She tells the police that her mother, by the way, Lawrence, is complicit, and that sometimes her mother would plan these things and partake in them. I mean, it's really terrible, disgusting stuff, okay? Suffice it to say that Dennis and Lawrence are of course arrested, the mother and the father, and they are imprisoned until 2004, when their lawyers are able to secure their release until after the trial and the sentencing. And guess who gets brought into his legal team? Okay. Eric Dupond Moretti, guy who thinks I'm like colluding with Russia and taking instructions while I'm on a pilgrimage. Now, Dennis is his client. The father is his client. Dennis is a bit of a psycho, you might imagine. Despite being released and given instructions that he has to stay away from his daughter, he violates that because he just wants to be around Virginie. He's a little obsessed with Virginie, and he immediately begins asserting control over the family again. Now, if you're Eric, this isn't good for the lawyers unless you come up with something, a way to refashion what is happening in this family, right? And Eric Dupond Moretti is up for the task. Him and another lawyer that he's working with, Hubert Delarue, begin to spin everything that's happening as a tale of, wait for it, happy incest. Yeah, he is known, by the way, this guy Eric, as an ogre in France, the ogre of France. Because of this, he spins it as happy incest. He explains to the daughter that they need to get behind this idea, right? We're going to sell to the court that you guys are a happily incestuous family. This is all consensual. So eventually the parents are sentenced to 8 years in prison for their crimes, but Eric Dupond fights for their sentences to be reduced in the appellate courts. He does this by getting Betty, the sister, to backtrack on her allegations. She suddenly is telling the appellate court that she was simply jealous of her sister, Virginie. She retracts her earlier claim of the father having raped her and instead says that her father and her sister, Virginie, were incestuous consensually. Now, I should also mention that this is all taking place in Amiens. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Amiens, yeah, where Macron was born and raised, and where Brigitte Macron was born and raised. They are the appellate court that is holding this trial that Eric Dupond is trying to convince about happy incest anyways. And he's looking at this court, and he explains to the court that this is actually a case of extraordinary love. Extraordinary love. I'm wondering if this is going to be part of the tactics that are used when Brigitte and Emmanuel come here for their case. Extraordinary love. That's what they told. We did learn, actually. They were an extraordinary case. It was a teacher and the student, and this was so compelling and extraordinary. Anyways, let me not get lost here. It works. The sentence is then reduced, consequentially, during the appeal trial in Amiens to just 5 years in prison, 3 of which he had already, which were suspended. Dennis Menashe had this suspended. His wife gets 1 more year than he does, which is kind of crazy, but that's because Eric Dupond Moretti also worked on this idea that really the wife is the one we should really be mad at because she wanted this relationship to take place. Now, if you're wondering why it is that Betty changed her story, it's because Virginie, her sister, begged her to, and her sister begged her to because it was the only way that she was going to get custody of her son back. Yeah, throughout all of this, they took Nicholas, the son. And Eric and the lawyers are saying, well, I want to see your son again. Virginie is going to Betty, and Betty is like, please. And she's like, please, Betty, just change your testimony. I just want my son. I love my son. And so Betty agrees to do it. She acquiesces. This is going to be according to her own testimony later. Years later, Betty writes a book called It Wasn't Love, where she recounts specifically how Eric Dupont was a special kind of demon. I'm paraphrasing here, but he's the one that helped to craft this narrative of consensual incest. It was him. And she is outraged by the fact that he is now going to become the Justice Minister of France. Now, if you're wondering about what happens thereafter to Virginie, it turns out that Eric maybe had it wrong. The incest was actually not that happy. The story ends quite tragically. After being allowed to return to Virginie, thanks to the Amiens appellate court, Dennis is being judicially monitored, and Virginie reports that she is fearful and terrified of her father, fearful that he has it within him to kill her. Fast forward to September of 2014, and Virginie works up the courage to leave her father with her son, Nicholas. She escapes, and Nicholas is her motivation. He's older now. She does this through a private organization that helps people that are impoverished plan their escapes. Thereafter, her employer, somebody that she works at the garage with, decides to help out. His name is Frederic Piard, and he houses her and her son. Dennis, throughout this, is hunting Virginie, right? Because he loves her. He loves his daughter, if that's what we're calling love. And on October 7th, 2014, after following her to Frederic's garage, he first shoots Frederic dead, then he shoots his daughter, Virginie, dead, and then he turns the gun on himself. Frederic Piard obviously dies. Dennis Monachet miraculously survives. It's a botched suicide attempt, but then he is disabled. Years later, he appears at the new trial, now this time for a double murder. He's in a wheelchair. He's speaking through a type pad. I mean, how's that for happy incest? But you do have to imagine Betty's surprise when she learns years later that that lawyer, who she felt had really masterminded this whole happy incest thing in Amiens, was selected by a couple from Amiens, no less, to become the Minister of Justice for the entire country of France. And not only that, but while he's the Minister of Justice of France, similarly, Emmanuel Macron, remember when Emmanuel Macron gave that Legion of Honor award to Patrick Buey, the person who worked on Brigitte's face? Well, he also gives a Legion of Honor award to, and we have a picture here, Hubert Delarue. There's the Minister of France buckling it onto him, putting it onto him, the lawyer who worked alongside Moretti to come up with the happy incest. He gets one too. Everybody gets a Legion of Honor. Everybody that gets a Legion of Honor that's doing good stuff for, I guess, the aims of the Macrons. Now, again, like if you are a person, you might be thinking, oh, well, this could just be one case. That's what defense attorneys are supposed to do. No, you're like way off, okay? It's never that when it comes to Emmanuel and Brigitte. It's always a pattern that's emerging. And certainly for Eric, he has a very unique skill set. He's interested in a very unique set of circumstances. Inceste, pédophilie.
C'est vrai que j'en avais parlé la dernière fois, mais je voulais absolument revenir en détail parce qu'elle en donne beaucoup plus. Il y a bien sûr l'affaire Outreau, où il avait défendu les parents qui organisaient un véritable réseau pour violer leurs deux fils. Éric Dupond-Moretti, on le retrouve dans les affaires les plus sombres de ces 20 dernières années. Et, comme elle le précise, il a été, comme par hasard, choisi pour être l'avocat du couple Macron dans cette affaire. Il est vraiment important de parler de ces affaires, même si on les connaît, même si on en a déjà entendu. Il faut relayer, il faut en parler. Il ne faudra et il ne faut jamais laisser tous ces gens qui se prennent pour une élite, qui ne sont que des élites décadents, qui ne devraient pas être là où ils sont. Mais c'est parce que ce pays s'est laissé également rentrer dans une forme de décadence. Dans ce pays qui a oublié d'où il vient, qui a oublié toute spiritualité, et bien voilà le résultat. Il faut vraiment que notre société, notre pays soit capable de faire plus et de protéger, bien sûr, nos enfants, de les écouter et de les protéger face à tous ces déviants et tous ces démons, contre tous ces prédateurs. Alors c'est vrai, c'était pas la vidéo la plus fun. Si vous aimez mon travail, eh bien vous lâchez un like, un commentaire, vous vous abonnez et vous pouvez me soutenir sur Tipeee, sur Patreon. On se retrouve pour une nouvelle vidéo. Allez, ciao.